Yeah, well, you keep killing it, man. I thought you were gonna win the $1,500.
I am. Don't sleep on the tortoise, bro. That's my hashtag right now.
That's a stupid hashtag.
The best hashtag in the world because what the tortoise he won the race.
Yeah. I'm sure Justin Timberlake's gonna tweet that thing out.
I'm sure you and your hair.
I'm sure he refers to himself as the
I'm
tortoise.
only gonna eat soup for a month. All I'm gonna do is healthy. No, don't sleep on the tortoise, bro.
El Tortuga.
Welcome to the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast with TJ and Sonny.
Hello and welcome to the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast. My name is TJ McConaughey. I am joined by my best friend Sonny. Sonny, what is real?
What is real is my cravings for a Reese's Nutrageous bar that I've been starving myself of all things chocolate for the last 30 days because of this youth pastor diet that I'm slowly going to creep up and dominate. Don't sleep on the tortoise, TJ. That's my motto.
Hashtag don't sleep on the tortoise.
Hashtag
That's awesome.
Don't sleep on the tortoise.
Hey, I have something I have to correct on the show, and we all kind of hyped this up, like getting past 7 was the end-all, be-all, but I looked up the stat, and it's actually 14. You've got to get past 14, and then you're into the land of where half of... Yeah, the top 50% at that point. So it's not 7. Okay. So it was a false celebration. I'm sure no one looked on that.
I was wanting to encourage you because you were losing hope there for a bit. So I just wanted to throw a low bar number out there that you could achieve.
The content was slipping, so we needed to kind of just bring something in there to say a little carrot out there. But anyway, hey, Sonny, what are we going to be talking about tonight?
Well, we got three segments like always. We got Win of the Week. Me and you talk about what's going good in our programs, what the Lord is allowing us to oversee and be a part of, and it's all to His glory. Second segment is Tales from the Fringe, which, TJ, this is the rando favorite, bro. This is where me and you just tell stories from stuff we've done in the past, stuff we're doing currently, and sometimes we talk about future stories. And they haven't happened yet, but we're trying to will them into existence.
We've never done that. There's no future story.
Well, I'm talking about the future of doing the future stories. And then the third topic is the pregunta of the week. TJ brings a question that he steals from the interwebs, and we talk about it. We kind of give a couple gives and takes on it, and then that's it. 3 segments. Bing, bang, boom.
Yeah, I love it. And you know what I really love? I'd really love it if we quit with all this pregame chatter and we would get to the show.
The show!
Join the conversation on Facebook and Instagram. And when you subscribe to this podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating. We desperately need your approval.
Win of the week. Now, this is kind of an interesting little moment we're having here is that, as it stands, I have won 3 wins of the week, and Sonny has won 2 wins of the week. This week, we put the poll out, and both Sonny and I engaged in some dirty voter. Let's call it voter suppression.
What do they say in Princess Bride? Never fight to death, or never fight with a Sicilian when death is on the line, or something like that.
Yeah. Well, so we got 2 Sicilians here, basically, and currently, we've gotten the most votes we've ever gotten on these things, and we are dead tied.
Actually, that's incorrect.
50%. So we are sitting here being completely tied. What did you say? Did you say it's incorrect?
It is not a tie, and it did not go how we had planned previous to the show. Previous to the show, we had talked about, because we were both 28, and I hadn't voted yet, so I was going to vote during the show and then win, but TJ... It happened naturally, bro. As you were over there talking about Piffle and whatever, I picked up another vote, all natural.
That wasn't natural. You were texting.
Right now
I saw you 30 texting
votes
somebody
for me
right there.
And 29 votes for you. I declare myself the winner, and now I'm going to vote for myself and that is now 60 votes.
Oh,
I have 31 of
my
them.
gosh.
You have 29. So,
well, Sonny, congratulations. Then I guess there was no tie. There
I'd
was
also
no
like
need
to
for you
point
to use
out
that extra
that
vote.
only one of TJ's votes is a non-friend of his, where I have at least 50% of my votes are non-friends of mine. So thank you, randos of the internet, for making me better than TJ this week.
I would also like to point out that 100% of the votes are pretty much all my friends on both sides. So it's
So
my
that
friends
actually
voting
is
for you too.
more
So
in non-favor of you, that your actually own friends won't even vote for you.
it just means I have a lot of friends, Sonny. Whereas you,
Do you really have a lot of
again-
friends, TJ, or do you have a lot of people on the internet that think?
You're right. You're right. Yes, there is a distinction there. I have a lot of internet friends. But hey, you know what? Thanks for voting. Thanks for giving me that L that week. I definitely needed that because my head was getting a little too big. And Sonny for sure needed that win because you know
Yes,
he's been
badly.
He's been having a hard time. So that's good. Now we are completely tied up on 3 wins of the week to 3 wins of the week. So I'm actually happier that we didn't get the tie because you know it's when
Quit
you
trying
see
to
that,
play the humble card here.
Would you have liked a tie?
You
Would have
started the
liked it, a
warfare,
tie?
bro. You started reposting this stuff. I was just cruising on my normal week, deleted
Okay.
Facebook and everything.
All right.
Next thing you know,
All right. Enough with the pregame again stuff. Let's get to the real content here. So Sonny, you won. So it's make it, take it. So let me hear about your win of the week.
All right, make it, take it. Here we go. This week, TJ, has been kind of a crazy week. As you know, these kids won this award, national contest for writing songs, and they won. And now we're having to plan this LA trip. And this week, kind of the news started getting wind of it. So we actually did a local TV interview with KGW, that's Channel 8 down here in Oregon.
Yeah.
And they came down on Tuesday, had the cameras and everything right in our little studio that we've done all our music with. Gave both the guys who won first place an interview, gave me an interview, and then kind of took film of us, you know, doing our thing. It was kind of weird. So the lady was like, okay, go ahead and like pretend you're recording and doing what you normally do. And so we were like, okay. And so I was like, just like fake clicking, and I was like, oh yeah, what about this bar?
Yeah.
What about that bar? And then it turned into like actually just talking about it. And then we kind of got in a little arguing match as me and one of the kids. I was like, no, do it like this. He goes, no, I'm going to do it this way. And I was like, that's dumb. And then I think she got on that on film. So I'm hoping she cuts
Has
that
this
part
aired
out.
yet?
No.
I think the story might be a little different than what you think it's going to be. But okay, good going.
Abusive counselor. No. So it's gonna
Counselor
air,
pounces.
Yeah. It's going to air 2 days prior to the Grammys. And so, you know, the
Hey,
kids
there
are
you go.
just beyond hype, right? They're so stoked for this
Man,
kind of
that's
stuff.
awesome, man.
And then yesterday on Thursday, we normally have the group on Thursday evenings. The mayor of the city that we operate out of, he came down for an hour and was sitting there talking with us and talking to the kids. And you know, he's an older gentleman. He's probably in his sixth. I think he said he was 70 years old. Anyway, so we play him the song. You know, he goes, "Well, can I hear the song?" And, you know, the song's it's rap. And there's some cuss words in there. So I laid out, you know, the premise of the song and why there's a couple cuss words in there. And so he was all for it. So he heard the song, and afterwards it was really cool. He looks at the kids and goes, you know what? He goes, I am not a connoisseur of rap. It's pretty funny, right? He goes, I am not a connoisseur of rap, but I can tell that you guys were really honest and open in your lyrics in that song, and it made me relate to that song. And so it was just so neat to like, something I've always preached to these kids is be vulnerable with your lyrics. Don't try to be cool. Be vulnerable and be open and try to just speak the truth. And they did, and even the mayor, a guy who was 70 years old, has nothing to do with these kids, could relate to it, man. So super cool. Yeah. And then on top of that, right after the mayor left, the local paper came down and did an interview with them and did pictures, and they think they're going to run that on the front page of the paper next week.
Wow.
So just I mean, this week was kind of crazy, setting all this stuff up on top of my normal job, and the kids, you know, they were studs all the way through it, and I was kind of checking in with them before and after each interview, just kind of like because I don't want them to be exploited, you know? I've never been a fan of propping kids up as the trophies of a program. And I really, really, really hate that mindset and hate that approach when you work with kids. Mm-hmm. And so I was really kind of trying to protect them from being exploited as like, oh, these little drug addicts or all these mentally ill kids and stuff like that. And I really respect the interviewers from both the TV and the paper and also the mayor. But the kids kind of handled their own, you know, and they didn't try to, you know, like say anything that wasn't true, but they were just honest and stuff. And man, it was just sweet. It was just like this, like, you know, like, you know, we've been hunkering down for months doing our program. We don't try to seek out publicity. We just do our thing. And it was neat to kind of see them be recognized for the hard work and dedication they put in, not only to being sober, but to like participate in such a really cool event and get credit and recognition for it. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, just super cool. Probably one of the coolest weeks of my life, prior to even going down to LA and all that kind of stuff. So super, super cool, man.
That's so awesome, dude. And what I love about that is I love that these kids who would have never gotten to have an opportunity, you know, if they're going to get interviewed by the newspaper or the local TV channel or that stuff, it was probably going to be for a negative thing. You know, that was the track that they were on, you know. They would have not been liking their front page press at that point. Yeah. However, you provided them this opportunity and you dreamed up this opportunity and this contest came along so that they could take a lot of this negative energy and put it out into the world in just an honest and bearing all way. And it's therapeutic, but then the ramifications for that are that they get to go and do all these interviews and now what these kids are being celebrated for is their recovery. They're being celebrated for being honest about their problems. And I mean, I can't think of a better lesson for a student to you know, get some attention for than to, hey, I was in this dark place and here's some lyrics from that dark place. But I'm in recovery and that's why these lyrics are coming out, you know? And I think, I wouldn't call myself a connoisseur of rap music. I actually like rap and hip hop music and all those things. And I can tell the difference between good stuff and bad stuff. But I think it's probably just like prayer, man. The only like bad hip hop lyric is a dishonest hip hop lyric. And I think that these kids putting these lyrics on there, you know, that are honest and they're real and being celebrated locally and in such a big way is such a huge win. And I love it. I love it, man. I love the fact that these kids are getting interviewed and getting some attention for that. That's a great win, man.
It's very countercultural to them to be recognized for being vulnerable. If you think, you know, and I think about youth culture today with the influence of social media. I mean, it's always been there, but the influence of social media and Instagram and look your prettiest and look your best for every picture you take nowadays. It's so counterintuitive that they're being celebrated for being vulnerable and being honest. And I just love that that's kind of the reoccurring theme, no matter who we talk to and whether it's the state, the paper or the TV or just whoever, the reoccurring theme keeps coming up. Man, these are really honest lyrics. Man, I can tell this was heartfelt. And to me, it's so cool to be able to sit back, because that's what I've been saying to them all along, but have other people recognize that and reaffirm that into their life. Like, talk about being 17, 18 and having an impressionable lesson, you know, taught to you, right? So, you know, my prayer is that they just will always remember this and moving forward, just kind of carry themselves with that humility and humbleness and honesty, and just see that life is better when you're living congruent with yourself, you know? So yeah, man.
Very cool, man. Very, very, very cool. I love that stuff. So my win of the week, I was going to go with a more of a self-aggrandizing one, but I think I might save that one for later because I think that story is still developing. And so I kind of want to wait for that story to happen. So I'm going to go a little more organic in this week's win of the week. And it goes like this. I've been grinding as a youth pastor for over a decade now. And I have a unique experience in that I've worked for a really tiny church, 40 people on a Sunday, mostly gray haired. They paid me with a cell phone tower. Then I worked at kind of a mid-sized church. And then now I work at kind of a bigger church. And so I've worked at all of the levels, and our church is kind of on the threshold of becoming a mega church. So maybe someday I'll even be able to say, hey, I've worked at a mega church too. But in all of that time, I have been a department of one. And I mean, I've had some interns along the way. I've had some help, like some different things kind of come my way, different volunteers that have been really, really awesome. So it's never felt all that alone or lonely or any of that stuff. But at the end of middle school summer camp this year, I went and I talked to my direct report. His name's Bob. He's an awesome dude. And I talked to Bob and I said, Bob, I need some help. This ministry is outgrown just one person being a part of it. And, it had, he recognized that, and he knew that, we needed to do something. And so the proposed thing that they kind of came back to me with was, what if we got you an assistant, an administrative assistant to, help you with, the office work that needs to kind of be done around here. And so, I was thrilled, I was thrilled that I was going to be able to do that. So then I got to go through this whole process. I mean, so I've had interns before, but interns are kind of students that I've always known saying, hey, do you want to come work at the church during the summer? And that's a great thing to have, but it was never this kind of formalized process where you put a job description out there and then you have different people apply to that job. And then you look through applications and you kind of select the ones you want to interview, and then you do interview and a group interview. And then you decide, hey, this is the person I think would fit best for the job. But I got to do all of that stuff. And this week I got to give a phone call. And it was such a really incredible experience, Sonny. And I know this doesn't have to do with a lot of student ministries, but man, I think this is going to relate to a lot of guys who are out there grinding and have had this experience. I got to give a phone call to someone I just hired. And it was so cool, man. It was so cool to call somebody up and to say, hey, we loved your interview. We think you're qualified for this position, and we'd like to offer you the job. And I got an offer sheet right here with your name on it. If you want to come in and read it, and if you want to take the job, sign it. And she was super excited. She was super excited about it. And so now I've reached a different level in my youth worker status where I have become a department of two. And now I'm leading a department in this way. And really, I mean, like, our program's been big enough for this for a few years now. So this is going to be a huge deal to me. But really, and you probably know this better than anybody, Sonny, this is going to be a huge deal for Britt. Because Britt has been my defuncto assistant forever.
Non-paid assistant forever.
Yeah, I mean, my wife, I'm talking about my wife. She literally does all of this stuff. And so, for her to be able to, and really it's going to lighten her load a lot more than it's going to lighten my load. But at the same time, that means that, me and Britt can concentrate on other things, and we can hopefully grow this ministry even more. And so it's special, man. It's super cool. I mean, I know there's guys out there, you're working in some tiny little church, maybe in Iowa or Kansas or wherever. And you're kind of like, man, it's just me, like maybe you kind of feel alone. And I think this is something that's very real inside of youth work, is the feelings of feeling alone in these things. And I can tell you that, man, I've been there. I'm like, does anybody looking? Does it even matter? I remember doing my first attendance drive, and we were trying to get 15 students to youth on a Sunday. And I remember when we first started and there was 2 there. And I just want to say to you guys, like, these things that happen, and it's not that big of a deal to hire an assistant, but it felt really, really awesome. But these things happen when you just keep grinding, and you might not think anybody's looking, but God's looking, and the people who care about you are looking. And if you are faithful, God will return faithfulness to you. And that's what I felt like. So it's really awesome, man. We're gonna have a little mini department here at the church. And so I'm hoping that this also, we have plans for other future hires coming in the thing. So we're going to hopefully become a department of 3 soon, and maybe even more someday. So I'm super excited about that. God is good. He's blessing our ministry. And now there's another person who is paid to do youth ministry at our church. And that made me so happy. So
that's cool, man. That's gotta be a relief. You kind of, obviously for Britt, but also for you, and I was the 1-man apartment forever in our counseling program. And so I was, and we, early on, I moved our program, with the blessing of my boss, off site of the main office. And so the main office had admin people and cleaning crew and all that kind of stuff. But when I moved it off site, I kind of became the admin person and the cleaning crew and all that. I had to order my own supplies and everything. And it was that way for a while. And then I got Casey on board, and then we was kind of, we just had 2 people there, and then we hired another counselor. And then actually we're getting an admin position who starts in 2 weeks.
Oh, that's awesome, dude.
And it's our first admin position of the adolescent program. And so I'm just looking forward to not having to set up the group room anymore and having to call these parents myself and just all the, and really it's an interesting position, because while the person may not feel as if they're having direct interaction with the youth, what they're freeing up the people who do have the interaction with the youth, they're able to free up those people to have so much more interaction with the youth.
Yeah.
And so they're really an integral part of the program and stuff, and I don't know how you're going to do it, but our admin person will come to all of our events. He'll come to our camp. He'll come to all those kind of things, and he'll be forming relationships with all the kids. He may not have direct counseling duties with the kids, but he'll definitely have an impact and form relationships with those kids, And so, I got a laundry list of ideas ready to go for him when he starts, man. So I know that feeling very well. I'm right in the middle with you there too. That's cool.
Yeah, dude. And one of the other things that I've kind of forgot to talk about is the conversation around this with my superiors, with the people who, are making bigger decisions at the church here. It was so good, man. I knew that when I walked in that room, and it wasn't like this idea of do I have the chips to ask for this? People talk about this, the idea of chips.
Or something like that.
Yeah, there's this everlasting poker game going on, and in order to request something like this, you got to have a lot of goodwill kind of built up here and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things that was talked about in helping me out was that they wanted me to be healthy, and they wanted my family to be healthy. And it wasn't just like, man, yeah, the youth ministry is growing and we want to keep feeding that beast. So let's throw some more coal on the fire, That wasn't the discussion. It wasn't like, they knew what I could do. I'd already proven myself. And the idea here is we got to keep this guy healthy. We got to make sure that we're giving him encouragements. And if he's coming in and saying, hey, he needs this, then we're going to trust that he needs it. And again, the way they kind of were talking about it was, we want to keep you healthy. And it's crazy, I unfortunately, man, and me and you have been a part of this. There are a lot of churches who have the perspective, and there's a lot of boards who have the perspective of you can always get another youth pastor, So if this one
starts a college kid wanting to work with youth.
Yeah, and so this one's getting a little old or getting a little entitled, then we can move on and we can find somebody cheaper, and that's the thing is that wasn't the conversation, it never even got to a place. It was like we like what you're doing, we want to keep you encouraged, and we want to have you here for the long term. So if you're saying that you need it, man, we want you to have it. And again, it wasn't even like the way Bob even talked to me about it. He was like, we don't want somebody, don't hire somebody who you think is going to grow the youth group. Don't hire the person that you think is so talented that they're going to just, be able to grow. Find the person that's going to be an encouragement to you. Find the person who's going to be able to take some things off of your plate so that you can concentrate on being there and being healthy for your family. Isn't that crazy? I mean, it's not even like we need somebody who can take some stuff off your plate so you can reinvest that into more of the ministry.
Help you directly.
Yeah,
because that's the sign of a healthy church, because they know if you're taking care, and in the counseling field we just call that self-care. like you have to take care of yourself to take care of others, right? And so, I mean, that to me points to a healthy church. If they're thinking, if you're taken care of, the kids will be taken care of. It's not we need to hire something for the program. It's hire something for the guy who's running the program. And that makes sense to me.
Yep, absolutely, man. And so it's all good, man. It's all good. Find yourself in a healthy situation, and then just hang on. Don't chase what's the next place? Where's my next place going on? If you're at a healthy church, man, just stay there. Stay there as long as you can and just be encouraged.
Tales from the Fringe. Tales from the Fringe, where me and TJ talk about different stories of our past working with kids. All right, so this one time, back when I was doing groups over at the main campus of our agency, oftentimes we would leave and go play basketball at a local park. And this park was known for kind of being a little rough around the neighborhood. It was right next to one of the more difficult schools in the town I'm at. And it was just known for having its issues, whatever. Anyway, but it was, like 4 o'clock, 4:15. I didn't think anything of it. I only had 3 guys with me. So we went over there and we're playing basketball. One of the guys with me is wearing all blue. He's obviously, he's from Sereno. And, he's a gangster kid. So we go over there. We're playing basketball. We're minding our own business. And then I look over to the off the court, and I notice there's a guy, and he's kind of mad dogging us. And he was an older guy, probably in his late 20s, and you could tell he was rough. He had a rough day. And he's mad dogging us. And so, whenever you're with kids, you have got to be aware of your surroundings, right?
Yeah,
so I just notice what's going on. So I'm going to ignore him. I'm not going to pay any mind to it. So I start noticing my guy is staring back at the guy, right? He's kind of like shooting like towards the hoop, but his head's like looking out to left field. He's kind of doing that whole thing. So I'm like, oh, great, here we go. So then the guy, the other guy, the older guy, he walks up over like down on the edge of the court, kind of like by the baseline 3-point shot. And he's standing there, and he's just mad dogging my guy, and my guy's mad dogging him. So I'm like, all right, I got to step in here. Something's going to happen. So I look over at the guy, and I can tell this he's on something, right? He's easily, smoking meth or smoking crack or something. His eyes are almost coming out of his head. He just kind of has that look about him. I'm like, oh boy. So I go, hey man, we're just here playing basketball. How you doing? He goes, I'm doing good. How's your guy doing over here? I go, he's doing great. I go, we're just here playing ball. He goes, well, tell him to stop looking at me. And I go, well, you're looking at him too. And I go, we're just here playing basketball. We're not trying to cause no problems. And then he goes, where are you guys from? Meaning like gang reference, right? Like, where are you from? Like, what hood you from? And I say, well, we're actually a counseling agency. I'm a counselor. We're just here playing basketball, getting some exercise. And he goes, oh, okay. And then he just walks off.
Okay.
And the whole time he's walking off, he's like looking back at me, looking back at the kid. And I tell the kid, I'm like, just don't look at him, bro. Just don't look at him. Let's just play basketball. And the guy kind of kept looking at him a little bit. Then he finally did and played basketball. And then we ended up leaving. And it was interesting because I had known about this previously, but it was an interesting experience to really, really experience it. There's a code in the gang world that if you're legit in a gang, you don't mess with somebody like when they're with their family, when they're at a school, when they're at like a church, or when they're at like an event for kids. Like there's rules in the game, like if you're if you're in a gang, there's rules. You don't jump somebody if they're with their family or their daughter or their girlfriend or their mom or something like that. There's codes of this kind of stuff. And as soon as I said we were a counseling agency, he recognized that and he respected it, and he said, all right. And then he walked away. And so, and I didn't freak out. Inside my heart was beating, because I'm like, oh, great. This guy's going to try to do something. I mean, the kid's going to get in a fight. I'm going to be liable for him. I'm going to lose my job. So I took him off campus. We're playing basketball, yada, yada. Inside, I'm freaking out. But outside, I just kind of kept calm, just told him what's up, told him where we were at. We didn't have any problems. And he walked away. And I just learned a valuable lesson that day is like, whenever you're out in public, especially with your youth, you got to kind of be in control, and you got to lead, and leaders lead. And I just had to step into the situation, and it was uncomfortable. I didn't want to do it. And a lot of things could have went wrong, but fortunately it went right, and he walked away, and everything was good and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, it's kind of nuts.
Wow, there's just a lot of fascinating things in that story. The first thing that comes to my mind is the idea of like faux morality. That's what I want to call it. That there's this code that even in this toxic culture of gang culture, a culture that I think anyone would agree that is a toxic place for a young person to be at, there is still a code. There's still a code of conduct. There's places where you cannot go and interrupt a guy who's trying to work on themselves. And so I think that's really, really fascinating. I think that a good point along those lines is that, even young people in toxic situations crave and respond to structure and rules. And I think that's a great example of this sort of bad situation, but there's still a code there.
So this guy named Dennis Morrow, he used to work for this organization called Janus Youth Programs up in Portland. He has this DVD series called Mailbox, and it's Malebox. And he talks a lot about the four things, the four walls, the two walls and the ceiling and the floor that kind of keep men inside this box. And then he goes on to talk about how gang culture and gangs themselves have figured out how to recruit, entice, and keep men interested in their organization, so to say. And he talks a lot about how there's an ancient text, so that's like the code and the rituals. There's initiation, right? And all across the world, there's lots of initiations for young men going into manhood, but we don't do that here in the States. Like, when does a young boy know he's a man? Well, gangs do that, and they have them do different tasks for it. And every young man craves that. They have mentors, they have OGs, so to say, to help out the younger kids kind of coming up, They have them do chores and tasks, like start out with tagging and then moving on up, getting, doing a job, right, so to say. And so, he goes on to draw all these parallels to how gangs are just so equipped and so much ahead of the church and other organizations at recruiting young men. It's fascinating to look at. And so, we think gangs are unruly. There's nothing to them. They're whatever. But actually, they're very, very, very structured organizations. Now, maybe not at the street level. It's not as highly structured. But definitely when you get into the higher rankings, it is very organized and very structured. And, the wannabes, they're not going to follow the code, much like in any aspect of life, right? Any wannabe is not really going to follow the code, but those who really want to be a part of something crave structure. And it's kind of like your little kid who will want to have his own autonomy, but he'll look back, when he's learning how to ride his bike, he'll ride up 20 yards, and then he'll look back to make sure it's okay for you to give the okay, and then he'll ride further. And that's that whole kind of symbolism of learning your own autonomy, but still structure is like woven into the fabric, I think, of being a human being and stuff. So good lesson, valuable lesson, when you're in that situation, when you have youth in public, you being the leader, you have to lead, because you don't know, what kind of situation could happen. And, there's no textbook for that kind of stuff. So, it was kind of a crazy story, man. Crazy time.
Yeah. So I'm going to break into a different genre here of Tales from the Fringe. And me and you both haven't gone here. We've more kind of talked about stories from, different situations. But I was gonna go way back to a time when I was a fringe kid. So this is a story about me on the fringe. And so I'm pretty mild nowadays, but the way I grew up and how I grew up, I didn't go to church. I wasn't a church kid. My family went to Catholic mass on Christmas and Easter, so we were like Catholic when we wanted to be. But religion was strange and distant in my life, and not something I was clinging to until something crazy happened at 16 years old. I found Jesus, and that changed everything. And for the first year, maybe year and a half, I was just so on fire for God. I was running hard after Jesus, and I was just I was reading the word, I was praying, I was in small groups. I couldn't get enough Bible studies. When the door was open at the church, I was there, and I was inviting friends to come there. And, I was just, church was my everything. And then about a year and a half in, maybe 2 years in, I became very aware, and this was a huge stumbling block to my faith. I became very aware of hypocrisy. I started seeing students who would like sing on worship team and lead and pray and people I really looked up to at youth group. And I'd see them at school. I'd see them at the high school, and they were just completely different people. And it was so weird for me because my contrast was I didn't go to church, and then I found Jesus and everything changed. And then it seemed like these people lived like me before Christ. But then when they were at church, they lived as sort of an example to everyone else. And man, it just bothered me. And then it was compounded by I go to church, and I kind of went to a little bit more traditional church growing up. And older people and adults would dress up, and a lot of the men wore 3-piece suits, and the women wore their Sunday best. And I remember thinking like, that's just wrong, because I was really familiar with the book of James. I'd studied the book of James, and I was like, the outside doesn't matter, guys. And you guys dressing up, that's not right. That's not how church should be. And so I would make it a point to not be in my Sunday best and to an extreme. Like, whereas like the other side of, making sure that you are so well groomed that, that you look like you're already in heaven. I was the other side of that. I remember on one such occasion, I went to church wearing my sweatpants, a hoodie, and a hat. And at my church, there was a lot of people who would have thought, man, I was just sinning to high heaven just by wearing those clothes to church. And so that's what I did. And I wasn't showered. And I remember I came into that church service, kind of in my statement underdressed self. And I came into church late after the worship team, and all of my friends, they always sat in the same section. It was full, so there was no seat there for me. So I had to go find another seat. I thought, man, I'm just gonna leave. I don't need to be here today. And there's this old lady who kind of caught eye contact with me and said, hey, why don't you sit here? And it was like a seat right next to her. And so I spent that service wedged between this guy wearing a 3-piece suit and this woman who had invited me to sit down in her Sunday best. And the whole time that was happening, I was so uncomfortable, Sonny. I was so uncomfortable. And it was just a stark contrast in the clothes that we were wearing. And I was doing battle. I was doing battle in my own mind against the hypocrisy that I'd seen. And so I was literally just rehearsing an argument with this woman who was sitting next to me. And I was listening to the sermon. I was listening to the announcement. I didn't listen to anything. I was just doing battle in my own mind, thinking she's judging me so hard. And she doesn't understand that I love Jesus so much. And if she understood that, she would maybe see the hypocrisy of dressing up for church or judging someone who's not dressed up for church. And so that's what I was doing. And so afterwards, I was tired. I was tired of arguing with her in my mind. I haven't said anything to her at this point, but I was tired of arguing with her in mind. So I'm thinking, I'm going to get out of here. And I get up, and as I'm getting up, she kind of says, hey, and I could tell that she wanted to talk, but I was thought, well, maybe I could just kind of ignore her or, maybe act like I didn't hear her. And so I just kind of walk out there, and then she grabs me, Sonny, and no joke, she grabs me by my sweatpants. And anybody who wears sweatpants knows that's a risky business to get into, grabbing someone by their sweatpants, especially when you're in the sitting position and they're in the standing position. So I turn around thinking, this woman hates my sweatpants so much, she's going to take them from me. That's what she's going to do right now. That's her whole objective here. And so I'm like, all right, let the debate begin, because I am ready, and I turn around expecting to see judgment in her eyes. I turn around expecting to see condemnation in her eyes. And Sonny, what I see is a person. I see someone who's ready to listen, and I don't see those things that I expected to see. And she goes, hey, my name's Ethel. And I'm like, of course your name's Ethel. Like that's the perfect old lady name for you. And I look at her, and I realize that she wants to talk to me. And she's like, hey, and I say, well, my name's TJ. And she goes, well, what's going on in your life right now, TJ? And she has such good listening posture, man. Her eyes are locked and she's shaking her head yes. And she's, giving some verbal like yeses and nods and hums throughout when I'm talking to, that she just accepts everything I'm saying. And it was so easy for me to talk to her. And so I just tell her everything. I tell her, I'm a bad student, but I think I'm being called to be a youth pastor. So I don't know if I'm going to get into Multnomah. I want to be a youth pastor. I just met this girl named Britt, and I think that I'm in love with her, and I don't know what that's going to become someday. And there's this other problem. I see all these hypocrites all over the school, and I don't understand. I can't rectify that in my faith, and it's so hard for me. And I think about people who are dressing up for church, and I let her have all of it. And everything I say doesn't shake her. It doesn't change her. It doesn't offend her. She just takes it all in. And pretty soon it's just me and Ethel in an empty church, a big empty church, just talking. And after I conclude, after I kind of just tell her everything, she looks at me and she says, you didn't know this, but you sat next to a prayer warrior today. I pride myself on my prayers to God. So I want to do something for you, TJ. I want to pray for you, but I don't want to just pray for you today. I want to pray for you every day for the next 5 years, if you don't mind. And I'm looking back at her, and I'm almost crying at this point. I'm like, of course I don't mind, Ethel. Like, that's the coolest thing anybody's ever done for me. And it's crazy because she didn't jump in the advice train. She didn't jump in the advice column. She just listened and then said, hey, I want to pray for you. And sometimes I think we think, man, that's so cliche, Someone praying for us is so cliche, hey, I'm praying for you. But, to somebody who's struggling, to somebody who's dealing with some hard things, the words, I'm praying for you, could be miraculous. And that, in that moment, it healed my heart. It helped me to understand that there are people, and there's a lot of them who aren't hypocrites. And there's a lot of people who don't look like me, who love Jesus just like me. And I can sit next to somebody at church and we could share the same heart, even if our clothes don't match. And so that was me, man. That changed my life. And here's the cool part. I didn't get to the cool part, is that she said she was going to pray for me for 5 years, right, Sonny? And 5 years to that week, 5 years, I was a junior when that happened, but 5 years to that week, I graduated from Multnomah and I accepted my first job as a youth pastor.
No, TJ, I love that story. I feel like I've heard it before. I love that you walked in judging the church. Yep. As many do, and many have done, and many will continue to do. And it's like you, an outsider, and it was like you accepted Jesus, but then you walked into church judging the church because I don't know if it wasn't what you expected or it just let you down or whatever. But so you accept your Christ, you go to church, you're judging it for the exact same thing that you're doing in the moment, right? Which is always fascinating to me, is we judge the church for being judgmental. Like, that makes no sense. And then this lady, who, you're right, she should have nothing in common with you, yet she has compassion and empathy and sees a young person struggling, and she knows that it's all about relationships, and so she sits down to talk to you. And I love the point of, you have a problem? I'll pray for you. Like, why don't you pray for me right now? No, she doesn't do that. She goes, I'm going to commit to praying for you for 5 years. And I bet, TJ, she probably did pray for you for 5 straight years. Like, I wouldn't doubt it because I've met those Ethels before. And that's just,
there's no doubt, dude. There's no doubt. I mean, her eyes, you can just tell. I mean, here's the crazy thing is, especially youth, fringe kids, they are very acquainted with phonies. They can sniff out phonies better than anybody else. And that's what I think sometimes it makes it, you got to be so honest with yourself if you're going to minister to fringe kids. And that's who she was. She was so comfortable with who she was, Sonny, that it didn't matter like that I was such a skeptic and I was so jaded at that point. She could just cut right through it because she was honest, not because she was dressed like me or acted like me or liked the same things as me, but because there's this human value that transcends all other human values, and that's authenticity. And that's what I experienced in that moment. It wasn't just words; it was realness, and it was like, man, I needed that. Oh man, did I need that? And Ethel gave it to me. And here's another thing, Sonny, which I think is awesome that you told your story and I told my story, because here's the thing is, there's no difference in the judgment there, in the in crowd out crowd thing there. We judge gang members because one's wearing red and one's wearing blue. And here we are in our church, and it's my clothes that's
we're
separating
sweatpants versus 3-piece suit. Same thing. It's
the same thing. It's you're not like me, so we have beef. And isn't that crazy, man? Like it's the same thing. And it's crazy for me is that God puts the red next to the blues at church. He puts the old people next to the young people at church. And he says, you guys might separate yourself politically. You might separate yourself because of your skin color. You might draw lines in the sand of who's smart and who's not smart. But the gospel is the great equalizer. And in my eyes, you are all my children. And that's my favorite thing about what the church is.
You're still listening to the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast.
All right. Pregunta time, Ted.
Question of the week. All right, you ready? You ready for this, Sonny? Because this is going to be a fun one.
Let's do it.
All right. So me and you both, again, we've talked about this a little bit on the show, is that we have about 30 years of combined experience, which isn't really like that big of a brag in youth ministry, because that means that we've been irrelevant for a long time. And I talked about this last week. Is past 25, you're just not cool anymore. So like you don't get to write that check of like, I'm the
We've
cool
been
older
irrelevant
guy.
longer than we were relevant.
Exactly. And so, I'm in my mid 30s, you're in your late 30s,
Mid to late 30s.
What, somewhere in there. So here it is, Sonny. Here's the question of the week. When did you first realize that you were getting old in youth work? Now, here's the thing is, old in youth work doesn't mean disqualified. It doesn't mean that. It means that I had to change up my method the second I couldn't write the check of I'm 22 years old anymore. So what was the moment that sort of pushed you over the edge of, man, I am not young anymore in these things?
There's been several along the way. When you go to explain, when you go to use an analogy out of the Matrix movie, and the kids are like, "What's the Matrix?" There's been, where you go to meet the kid's mom, or they bring him in for a family session, and the parent is younger than you. But but I think the very first like real big eye-opening awakening for me was when I started seeing new clients come to me, new youth clients that were born after I graduated high school.
Yeah.
And I was just like, dang. I was like, I'm old. And for a while I fought it. For a while I tried to be, and I think we all do it. You just try to be cool and all that stuff. But then that didn't last long, because I realized I just wasn't, and I couldn't be that guy anymore. And really, I didn't want to be that guy anymore. And so I learned how to embrace kind of the dad role, so to say.
Yeah.
And I think it had such a profound impact on my ability just to love on these kids, coming from that fatherly figure type role, instead of trying to be, relevant in their life kind of role and stuff, and then it's allowed, I think, for a much more pure relationship. It's allowed for more pure conversation. It's allowed me to kind of have to, turn up the ratchet on accountability and not make that weird, because that's always been the premise of the relationship. And but definitely when I started realizing that these kids were coming to me after I graduated high, and it started creeping up. For a while, it was like a couple years before I graduated high school, and then it started being after I graduated high school. I was just like, holy smokes, dude, I'm old. So that was intense.
So there were some indicators for me. Here's a good test, youth workers. Go to your students and ask them how old they think you are, because that is hilarious. Because they will. You want to be humbled in that moment. Like I think I was like 29 years old, and I asked that question for the first time, and I had kids say 47. I was 29. I was like, what? Like 47?
Once you're 30, life's over, bro. Life's over at 30.
I was like, oh my goodness. That spun me into depression there for a little while, but also realized, like, I just chalked that one up. That's a dummy, That's
you're a stupid kid.
Yeah, you're lame, and there's a couple indicators. I remember, I think this year, the seniors in high school are going to be, they're going to be kids who were mostly born after 9/11, which is crazy to me. Like,
that's nuts.
And 9/11 to me was junior year in high school. So like, that's crazy to me that, the seniors, my oldest kids that I'm working with, they don't have any context for what happened on that day. So there's some of those things. There's the cultural references that you've made, which is funny because I felt old because one time I made a office joke, like at it's like this person on The Office. I did it like 4 years ago, and it just fell on deaf ears. Like, oh, no one watches that. But here's the crazy thing: is The Office has like made this total comeback in youth culture. So it's like, I am loving that I'm an expert on The Office, and like the kids are like, because they've sort of reclaimed it as their own. They've done the same thing with Friends, so there's been those things all along, but it was the day that like my graphics, like, cause I thought I was a pretty good graphic design person. Started to not be cool, and it's like, I've always designed our own t-shirts, and I've always kind of done this stuff, and forever I was relevant. It was good. I always kind of prided that we had good t-shirts and we had good things because I made them in Adobe Illustrator. But I think a few years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, like the kids kept being like, they kept saying like uncompliments to the stuff. Like, oh, is that the camp t-shirt? Or is that the color of the camp t-shirt? Or and that stuff. And then it happened again, like, because me and you kind of come from the same era, like of things. And you've always thought like, yeah, TJ's good at graphic design. That's kind of his thing. And so you're like, TJ, make the logo for our... For the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast, and I make one like using all of my understandings and all of my things, and I made a pretty kick butt one. I sent it to you. You're like, I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's
like
cool.
That's
cool.
Great. And I'm like, because I've had that experience too much. Like I've had that experience too much of it not being that cool. I threw it up on the Youth Pastor Forum. I think the DYM, and I said, hey, what do you guys think of this logo? And
I was like, why are you doing that? Who cares what they think? This is our logo. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go with it. And the number one compliment was, that looks like 2003.
The last time you were relevant.
And I go, yeah, because that's the year I graduated. I mean, and that was it, man. It was like, and so now, I mean, and you gotta switch it up, right? Like, so now, I get younger, cooler people than me to do the logos for me, and I love their logos. I'm not to the point where I can't appreciate, wow, it looks good. I'm just to a point where it's like, what I'm going to produce and come up with on my own, it's gonna be old, and so there's a few things you got to do to kind of keep yourself, relevant and real. But I think that relevance, that big R word in youth ministry, I think it's a little overrated. I think authenticity trumps relevance any day of the week, because that never goes out of style. If you are genuine, if you genuinely love kids, if you genuinely are seeking how to reach them, you'll find it. You'll find it, and you'll be able to do you inside of those things. And it won't matter that your references from the Matrix aren't killing anymore.
What's the quote? Nobody cares how much you know till they know how much you care. And I think that's such that's a relevant quote for this context and this conversation. I mean, just today I was in my office doing something. A former client walks in, and all she wanted to do was just tell me about how she's working at Arby's. She pays half the rent for her house for her and her mom, and she's saving up for a car. She got re-enrolled in school, and she just wanted to tell him. She hasn't been a client for like over a year, and she pops in every month or two just to tell me how she's making progress in her life. And the only time she's ever known me has been when I've been in this like dad mode thing, where I don't even try to be relevant no more, because she knows I care, and she knows I'll praise her for it, and she knows I'll listen to her. That's really it. Like it doesn't matter how young you are, doesn't matter how much hair you got. Obviously, I got no hair. Doesn't matter how you look, doesn't matter how you talk. Is if you show compassion, especially to a fringe kid who maybe hasn't had a lot of compassion shown to them, they will respond, and they will love you for it, and you can have a great working relationship with them, man. And it's irrelevant what bands you listen to, what shirt, if you have a Supreme shirt, if you don't have a Supreme shirt, if Gucci and Lit are part of your vocabulary every day, if you're on Snapchat or not on Snapchat, all that stuff is irrelevant as long as you show compassion and empathy, And dude, I walk in, I always have the most corniest dad jokes going on purpose, right? Just to paint that picture, obviously to kind of always paint the picture of separation of them, whatever, but just to play that role up even more. Yeah. But yet I've never had the success I've had working with youth as of now, even when I was in my late 20s and stuff, doing stuff, So yeah, man, it's not about relevant. It's about just loving on kids. That's always relevant, and that'll never ever go out of style.
Never ever go. And you know what? You can cash checks on younger staff's relevancy. Just surround yourself with a few young people who will make you look cool. But you don't have to. Don't make all of your staff young people. You don't have everybody, but let them design the logos. Let them tell you, what looks cool and what doesn't look cool, and that'll relate to the students. And you use their.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Why even have? Why is there a drive in youth ministry to have the young person be the cool draw? Why is that?
I think it's just meeting students where they're at. If a younger person can use their language, a younger person can relate to them on song choices, a younger person can, there's just some things there that help relate, and maybe that's the better word, relatability over relevance. And so you can cash checks on your young people's relatability, but again, you're gonna have to prepare them for 25 too, because that'll sneak up pretty quick, and then their relatability will go through the tubes, and that's where it's at.
So do you think it's wrong of the church to? Because we don't really do this in the counseling field. We don't, rely on. I used to kind of only want young people working with kids, but now more than ever, I'm just like, dude, just love on kids. That's all I care about, and know how to work with kids. Like, don't come off as the curmudgeon who's always telling them what they're doing is wrong. Like, know how to work with youth, but at the same time, be able to call them accountable and stuff like that.
I think we need all parts. I think we need every piece of it. An older person needs to take over that wisdom role, where a younger person needs to take over that relatability role, where a midlife person needs to take over that production role. Because as far as 30s go, that's one of your most productive decades. And so you need to be pumping it out during that time. And so just as you age, navigate those well, but also as you lead, know that. Your 70-year-old small group leader and your 30-year-old small group are going to bring different just gifts to the table that are time sensitive, and just use it. Just use it.
A couple years ago, we had our kids design, our youth clients design the camp logo shirt for us, and it was one of the best logos we ever had and stuff. And kids rated it, and they chose purple for the color. I was like, purple? Why not black? And they're like, why would we go with black? I was like, black's the best color. And they chose purple, like a dark purple, and they all freaking loved it, dude. And then this last year was like an orange, and they all loved that, so it was kind of interesting. Definitely not my first choice.
Well, there you go. right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us on the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast. We love you guys. Thank you for the conversation. If you're not part of the conversation, go ahead and head on over to Facebook and Instagram and give us a comment, give us a shout out. Send us a topic that you want us to talk about on the show, and maybe we can do that. We want this to be your conversation, not just our conversation. And so those two outlets are kind of where we want to see those things at. Thank you guys for the new follows. We got a bunch of new follows this week. We do also have a YouTube channel where you can also get all of these podcasts if you want them, including my 1-minute messages. And we're going to also be putting some other videos together in the future. So you're going to want to see that video section. Head on over to our YouTube channel, which is, again, just type in the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast on there and you'll find us. Other than that, thanks for being randos, and I love you.
You've earned your gold star. Thank you for listening to the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast.